now up to motion 97, complaints procedure in name of Writers, Producers and Directors Branch. Can I have other speakers at the front, please?
Good morning, Conference. Chair, Chester Young, WPD Branch. I'm here to move motion 97. In the past few years, we have noticed that some of our members are failing to get fair, adequate, and satisfactory outcomes with their complaints on very important issues they face in the union, like inadequate services for some members, lack of accountability, transparency, and in some cases, unfairness. Looking at our current prospect procedures and some of our members' experiences in complaining, it is clear that our complaints procedure is open to misinterpretation and in some parts incomprehensive. This has resulted to unfair processes that did not take into consideration the complainant's grievances or for prospects to learn from the complaint. Our current complaint procedure allows prospect staff to investigate themselves and handle complaint processes when the complaint is about lack of services or staff. And when the complainant appeals, the appeals process is dysfunctional as the complaints are sometimes ignored or no report or evidence of the investigation given. According to our present complaint procedure, an informal complaint has to be dealt with an informal process. But it is not clear or stated that a formal complaint can be dealt with informally, without any investigation or evidence of the decision of the outcomes. Yet, there's evidence to show that an informal process is being used to address a formal complaint. And when a request for proof, NEC minutes were not given or the decision why that's happened. Complaining and highlighting failures in our union is vital to the development and innovation of our union. When a complaint is made, in our present policy, when a complaint is made, the initial judgment of the complaint is assessed by the General Secretary. It is important that prospect complaint procedure be reviewed to make it clear and effective in language, processes, and to meet the needs of members fairly and effectively. Please support the motion.
Thank you. I have a number of speakers against. I'm not going to be able to take all of you because I also have an NEC speaker. I will take Mike next in order to help you to decide which points you want to make.
President Conference, Mike Clancy on behalf of the NEC opposing motion 97. I'm going to draw specific points from the motion. Whether the conference feels they've just heard evidence or assertion will be for you to judge, because the motion says current procedures are not followed according to the procedure laid out. That is not the case. Ask for a review. We constantly review the complaints procedure. And the key issue here is the final bullet point. In relation to a complaint about staff, service or facility or prospect, the investigating officer should be a senior prospect member and not prospect staff. That will cut across the complaints procedure, staff employment contracts, and the normal conduct of business. Let me just be clear from the current procedure. This is related to, this procedure allows for prospect to consider complaints about the services we provide. Typically, if we have to sometimes turn a member down for advice, they may complain about how we've conducted that judgment. Primarily, this is about casework and associated judgments, but it can include any act or omission by the union in relation to services on advice provided to members, which will include acts or omissions by staff or reps acting on behalf of the union. That's the purpose of the complaints procedure. The complaints procedure proceeds through an informal stage, if we can resolve it. It has formal complaint stage, it has a review stage, and it also has an outcomes and learning stage, where we obviously use complaints, if at all possible, to learn if we can need to make any improvements. But crucially, it places in the context of prospect staff procedures, making clear where a member of prospect staff is subject to a complaint, they should be made aware of their right to be accompanied by a representative of the GMB, our recognised union, or a colleague, and must be given a reasonable amount of time to consider the evidence, consult their rep, and prepare a response to the complaint. Now, I just share that to emphasise to conference that this is a very complex place whereby if actually a member of staff is concluded to have done something which we might have expected them to do differently, it passes to the employment procedures of the organisation. And as General Secretary and Chief Executive, I am the embodiment of the employer on your behalf in those circumstances, and those matters go through my authority through the staff agreement which is agreed with the recognised trade union. The complaints procedure is a product of discussion with the National Executive Committee, your representatives, and we have concluded this procedure some considerable time ago and keep it under review. It is separate to the Appendix 1 matter, where if there is a dispute between two representatives or a different form of complaint where action may be necessary under the rule book, that is dealt with under Appendix 1. So, conference, we have an absolutely clear complaints procedure. We apply it in accordance with the terms of the procedure. You have not heard any evidence to suggest that we haven't. You've heard assertion, and that assertion is derived from probably a single experience. We oppose the motion.
Thank you. Whichever one of you is first. I'm only going to take 3 of you.
Morning, conference. Angus Wheeler Rowe, BT Anglia. I'm going to make this very quick. Writers, Producers and Directors branch has, as Mike said, made a claim, a really controversial claim, that our complaints procedure is dysfunctional. The NEC has stood up, the General Secretary has stood up and said it isn't. You're asking the sovereign body of the conference to make a really bold statement here. I don't have the evidence for that. My branch doesn't have the evidence for that. And so we can't agree to this motion. So I urge you to oppose. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chair. Conference, Helen Edwards, Sellafield Limited Branch. I oppose this motion basically, like my colleague said previously, where is the evidence? I haven't seen any evidence that the complaints procedure isn't followed. Complaints procedure for me is part of employment law and should be dealt with by the employer. And as Mike said, in this case, Mike, Prospect is an employer. Therefore, I don't agree complaints about Prospect staff or services should be investigated by a Prospect member. And I'm sure most of you, like me, have enough to do dealing with complaints within our own workplace without being called on to investigate Prospect staff. So I ask the conference to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Conference. Richard Clapworthy, Western Power Distribution Branch. I'm going to be brief. It's been covered quite eloquently by Mike and my previous speakers, but the main contention for me is the final bullet point, which is that members should be responsible for investigating staff within Prospect. We wouldn't allow that for customers to do that within our own businesses, so why should we allow that here? It's wholly inappropriate. I move that we oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Calling the right of reply.
Conference, I think it's really important that we look at it. I know we're not having any evidence to show at the moment, but it's not also on one person's account that this has happened. There's cases where we put in complaints through, and then when the General Secretary look at a complaint, which is a formal complaint, and he uses an informal processes to deal with a formal complaint. And when we ask for evidence of the investigation and the minutes from the NEC that made a decision of that complaint, and no information is given. And when other complaints are made, sometimes they just get ignored and no action is taken. So there are quite a few things that we need to look at in the complaint procedure, really, to make it robust, clear, and concise. Please support the motion.
Thank you. Okay, we can go to the vote on that now, please. Could you open the vote for motion 97? Okay, you can close that now, thank you. Conference, that motion is lost. And we move to motion 98, which is publication of Profile Magazine, Retired Members Group.